GM is now saying 47 crashes can be attributed to faulty ignition switches. That's 15 more than the company first confirmed. The faulty switch has been blamed for at least 13 deaths. And to date, the auto giant has recalled nearly 16 million vehicles. That's more than the company sold in 5 years since it emerged from bankruptcy in 2009. Christine Roman's live in New York with more on the GM recall crisis and the company's new CEO, Mary Barra. Good morning, Christine.
Good morning, Carol. You know, there have been 30 GM recalls so far this year, 11 last week alone, and we know we should expect more this summer. It is a full-fledged recall crisis at GM, and there's one woman who's been on the job just 1 month before it all hit who's got to fix it.
Nothing but the truth.
Mary Barra has become the face of GM's recall nightmare.
My sincere apologies to everyone who has been affected by this recall, especially the families and friends who lost their lives or were injured. I am deeply sorry.
As the recalls mount, so does the pressure on Barra, who's tried to stay ahead of the criticism. She appointed 2 outside legal firms to launch an internal investigation. She named a new safety chief, and she's restructured the company's engineering and quality departments. But still, the question lingers. How could she not have known about the faulty ignition switches that started it all when others knew years before?
I was not aware that there was this issue until the recall was introduced on January 31st.
That was just days after she took over the top job at GM.
A bold new culture at our company.
Auto experts say that's not surprising given GM's massive corporate structure.
It's an enormous company. When outsiders come to work there, the first thing they say is it's mind-boggling.
But Barra is no outsider. Her 30-plus year rise at GM started with an internship. She moved through numerous engineering and manufacturing jobs and several executive-level positions, then CEO. That's why some senators found it hard to believe she wasn't aware, given that GM says its engineers detected the problem 10 years ago.
You're a really important person to this company. Something is very strange that such a top employee would know nothing.
But it is important that I think we understand what your role was during your 33 years. And more important than that the investigation point out just who knew what and when did they know it.
The results of GM's internal investigation are expected next month. Until then, the CEO, Mary Barra, has been meeting privately with lawmakers in Washington, D.C., briefing them on the recalls. How she handles this recall crisis will likely cement her GM legacy.
If she turns this around, she could be a hero. The challenge for her right now is she's got to deal with this crisis. She's got to, and I think she's doing a lot of the right things, insisting on recalls, getting this investigation done. She's hired outside consultants. But at the same time, she's got to continue to run a car company.
A car company whose sales have not slowed, despite the steady drumbeat of recall headlines. And that drumbeat continues. Again, Friday, there was the 30th recall notice of the year, 11 just so far last week, as I told you, Carol. She's getting high marks from our sources in Washington who say she's really briefing them on what's going on. But we are in the very early innings of this crisis for her, Carol.
I know I was going to ask you, how do you see this playing out for Mary Barra? But it's hard to say right now, right?
It really is hard to say. I mean, her manner has been good. She's been very communicative to the people in Washington, D.C. She has got to show that she's not part of the problem, she's part of the solution, that there's a new safety culture at GM. You know, and I've been asking a lot of analysts and people who study GM's books, is this going to hurt them? Carol, sales are not down. In fact, traffic is up at the dealers. If they can even harness a little bit of that traffic to new car sales, they could actually make more money because of the crisis, people going into the dealers to have their older cars looked over. So it's too soon to say. Also, you know, it's interesting, Bill Holstein, who wrote wrote a book called Why GM Matters. He told me, Carol, he said, people think, wow, that GM crisis is pretty bad for GM, but, I'm buying a Chevy. They don't realize, some buyers don't realize that GM is this big, overarching brand with all these other car companies. Or if you want to buy a Corvette, you're going to buy a Corvette. If you want to buy, the GMC Terrain, you're going to buy the Terrain. So it's interesting. If the economy continues to improve, she keeps this, this very grown-up and responsible. I mean, she's handling the crisis from the PR perspective, I think, very, very well. And if people want to buy a car, they're going to go buy a car, Carol.
It's twisted logic, but I get it. Christy Romans, thanks so much.